every day you essentially pay your dues by doing the harder thing when it's the right thing to do. Oh man, this is the best moment ever. I'm so happy. We have all of the favorite people. I can't say the favorite people because there's many more favorite people in my life, but many of the most favorite people that I have on the podcast today. We have Heather, Taylor, Hannah, and Eva. Eva, people will know as a frequent flyer on the podcast, highly popular. Eva, I just want to let you know that your episode is still top 5 of all time downloads. So there's that. Just a small flex for you. But wow. Heather and Taylor and Hannah are 3 of the gymnasts that Eva and I had the pleasure of coaching for a long time, and are now all through college and are moving on with their life. But they were very much part of the tumultuous years, I'll put it lightly, is that when our culture was falling apart at the seams and we had to do a lot of change. So let's go in the Brady Bunch order and kind of just do a quick intro. So Heather, let's go first with you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Heather Gomes. I switched to our gym my junior year of high school. Best decision I think I've ever made because I got to meet all these wonderful people. Ended up at Springfield College, the gymnastics there. And did I miss anything?
It's great. What are you doing now? You're still coaching?
I'm still coaching, and then I am going back to school in September to get my master's in mental health counseling.
That's great. Yeah, a lot of you guys have awesome stories like that, but you going from, as we'll talk about, like not the happiest with gymnastics to coaching at the gym now is crazy. Yeah. You were like on the verge of quitting, man. That was wild.
Yeah. But didn't think I was going to make it to even my senior year of high school doing the sport. And then I ended up going to college, and I solely blame it on the atmosphere that I was brought into. So I thank you guys for helping me fall back in love with the sport again, honestly. And now I'm coaching again, which I never thought I would end up doing as well. So. All
right. No crying early in the podcast. We can't get that aggressive. Sweet.
Hold back the tears.
Yeah, hold them back. Tay, you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Taylor. So I actually started out at our gym when I was younger. Then I switched gyms, and then I came back. I also ended up going to Springfield College, did gymnastics there, studied applied exercise science, and I'm going to PT school in the fall. Shout out Dave for being my mentor and just helping me out with all of that stuff.
Yeah, that was not an intentional consequence, but you're a cool story because you went from gymnast to unfortunately being a patient at Champion once or twice. And then you did an internship on the strength side, and then you went to PT school and you got in. And like the roundabout was pretty wild for me. I feel old, but I also feel flattered that I was able to help out with that. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Hannah, next.
All right, I'm Hannah. I went to our gym my whole life. Started coaching when I was like 14 with people, and now I'm still coaching there. And I'm a teacher. 2nd grade. Yes, 2nd grade.
And I think it's, am I muted? Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah. So I think the best part is that we have someone who was from the gym from the beginning before Eva, right? And then we have someone who like was at the gym and then left and then came back. And then we have someone who started at another gym and then came over. So we have all the perspectives like possible for this, which is really, really good. And then Eva, definitely you've had your story before, but chat about, I guess, start with how you got to the gym and what it was like maybe before I got there. And then what it was like for the first couple of years, because I'm going to openly say in the very beginning that I was definitely part of the problem. Like my ego could barely fit inside the door when I first started at the gym. And so that was part of the problem, but you can chat about that first. Well, everybody else maybe gathers their thoughts on what were some of the main problems or the hurdles that we had. I think it was like the 3rd year I started working there. I don't know. I think it was 2015 or 16, but I was just like, this is bad, man. Like we need some serious, this is awful. Like the coaches are burnt out. Kids are definitely not happy. The parents are not happy. So Eva can chat first, and then we'll all go round table and share.
Well, it's been quite the history, and I'm so grateful to have all of you on here. And Dave, your comment about how you feel old is so ridiculous because, but anyway, I'm kidding. So yeah, I mean, I studied psychology in college, went to grad school for mental health counseling, worked in residential treatment for a number of years, and was like bartending on the side to like pay my student loans and pay my way through school. And then got a call from an old friend who said that they were hiring a associate gymnastics director position at the Y, and I hadn't been back to the Y in a few years. I had kind of kept a toe dipped in, I would come back and do floor routines and, some choreography, but hadn't worked for the Y in a long time. And so, but I was kind of at a turning point where I was missing the world of gymnastics. And so I came back in, took the associate gymnastics director position in 2009. And Hannah was actually in my first group. So as part of the role, I was assigned to the level 7 group. And Hannah had just moved up from level 6. And so it was a gym full of history and tradition. There were so many kids in program. There were so many kids on the team, but the gym was kind of a disaster in a few different ways. I mean, it was a mess. The layout was kind of tricky. The safety was a little, it clearly was not the priority, when I walked in the door in 2009, and things were just kind of in disarray. There were some things that were really great. There were some strong team traditions. The kids, like all the gymnasts on each level, were very connected to each other, but the gymnasts didn't seem to know each other like as a team. So like I remember Hannah's group of level 7s at the time, like they didn't know who the level 4s were. They didn't know who the level 6s were. It was just like they knew who their group was, but we weren't really a team. That was one of the first things I noticed. The safety was a big concern of mine. Like there were a lot of gymnasts doing skills that they just weren't strong enough to do. They weren't ready to do. The move-ups were just kind of happening without any rhyme or reason. And there had just been kind of a revolving door of leadership over the years, which makes it really tough for any program, because as each leader came in, they kind of changed the way they do things. And so it was clear to me that the gymnasts and the parents and the coaches kind of needed a mama bear, needed someone to really bring everybody back together and lay down some solid safety rules, but also just expectations in general, and to stay consistent. Because I think there was a lot of bickering about she gets this and this person's a favorite, and that the parents were just kind of like coming into my office every day, stomping their feet, trying to get what they wanted for their child. And I was of this belief that like, okay, like I didn't know anybody, which was terrifying at first, but it was kind of a good thing because I walked in with no, preconceived bias of any favorites or anything. So I was just looking at skill levels. I was like, well, she's just not ready for level 7, or she's just not ready to move to level 5. And I think what finally the parents came to understand after a while was that like, I wasn't picking favorites. I wasn't like, I'm going to move her up because I like her better. I just simply wasn't going to move her up because she's not ready, and I'm trying to set her up for success and keep her safe. And so that was a big transition for the parent group, just understanding like a different way of leading the team. We also had some staff that they needed to move on. It was time for them to move on. And it was clear to me up front that their philosophies were not in line with mine. And I was really trying to change the culture and change the priorities in the gym. We couldn't just pick your 5 favorites and only coach those kids. Like we have to look at everybody and really treat everybody equally. But I have to say there were a lot of great things, great traditional things that we kept running that we're still doing. So that's kind of exciting. So, it wasn't all bad. I just think that it needed some love, and it needed some consistency, and it needed a strong leader in that spot to stay there and not lead for, a year or 2 and then leave in the middle of states, and then someone else coming in with a new perspective. So, so it took a long time to build up the trust of the gymnasts and of the parents. That was one of the most challenging hurdles for me to get over, because the kids just all looked so exhausted and they were abandoned. Like you could just see that everybody had felt like they were abandoned by their previous coaches and directors. And so for the first, I would say 6 to 9 months, I think everybody, and like Hannah, you can confirm or deny this, but I think everybody was just
hear what
like,
Hannah thinks.
everybody was kind of like, okay, we'll see how long she lasts. Like, you know, I remember Laura Lee specifically being like you're talking about March, like you're still going to be here. You know, she's popping off at the mouth, like with her little comments. And I still give her a hard time about that today. So, but just that, you know, everybody was kind of like, who is she? Why is she any different than the next person? And I just remember looking at these guys going, like, say that now, but I'm not going anywhere. Get used to this face because I am not going anywhere. And I will be at your senior banquets, giving you your senior speeches. And in those moments, I was like, I have to stick with these guys, you know, like I have to stick. This program needs support and it needs love. And so I did the best I could. I like dove in, and it was like my primary focus for a very, very, very long time. And still is in a lot of ways, but a lot of like, you know, there till 2 a.m, trying to organize team rosters and things that.
Yeah,
you know.
that's amazing. And that's a great place to start. I definitely want to hear what Hannah, if you remember anything from like, I don't know, like the just before Eva starts and then like into Eva starts, then Taylor, I don't know if you were around, like, I know obviously you didn't have a great experience when she wasn't there because you left, but I would love to hear like maybe Hannah first and Taylor about like what was going on. Cause I think some of that stuff was better, but it still carried through to when maybe we were both there.
Yeah, I definitely know what Eva's saying because when I was younger, I started on team when I was like 8. And then from then on, it was like director after director or head coach after head coach. So by the time Eva got there, we were all like, all right, we'll see. And I have like a distinct memory of her sitting us all down in our little trampoline area. And she's like, I'm not leaving. I am going to stay here and I will be here. And she did stay. So I think being young, because I was probably like 13 at the time and like loving gymnastics still. So I think that like for me, it was good to have someone that stuck to their word after all those years of people that had other reasons. And when I'm little, it doesn't seem like they care, even though they probably had perfectly fine explanations for moving on. But yeah, that's what I remember most. And I remember favorites for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a central theme. I hope when we get to like the solutions section is like consistency is so important with either like the staff that you have, but also like what you say. Like that's the biggest problem that I noticed when I was screwing up was like I would say one thing, but then I wouldn't want conflict to deal with somebody. So I would like not do or follow through on like what I had threatened. I didn't hate the word threatened, but like it was like, okay, well, this is what we're doing. And then as soon as like it got awkward, I would like cave like a tent. Like I don't think Alana's going to listen to this video, but like if she does, Alana, I love you to death. But like Alana was a handful sometimes. She was intimidating to sometimes like coach when she was having a feisty mood. And so I would like, all right, here's the assignment. This is the number that we're doing. And then she'd be like, oh, and I'm like, I mean, don't have to do it if you don't want to. Like, you know, I was so worried about like rocking the boat with different people because it was like so awkward at practice. You like set someone's fuse off and the whole bar practice falls apart. So I slowly developed over time, thanks to Eva and many others. I learned how to like politely, you know, get people through assignments that were hard. But Taylor, what do you think? Because you were around a little bit before you left.
Yeah, so I feel like it was just very chaotic. I feel like that's like kind of the best word to describe like pre-Eva. And I feel like a lot of the time there wasn't like a rhyme or reason behind like why things were going on the way they were. You know, like in particular, I guess just like kind of like the structure of practices and like certain assignments and all of that. And I left just because I kind of reached a plateau. I did a couple years, level 4, level 5, and then I just wasn't going anywhere with that. So I just kind of wanted to change something new. So that was my reason for leaving and everything. It was just very chaotic, and I kind of felt like I wasn't getting, you know, what I needed out of it. So.
Yeah, and then we can wrap this up with Heather too. So Heather, I don't know, share your experiences of maybe what was going on in your other gym that was not the most positive experience for you, and why. I mean, obviously the time lapse is so different between like when Eva starts versus when I was there working, but just on this theme of like maybe things to think about that aren't the best qualities of a gym that you want to try to change. What was going on with your gym before you decided to kind of jump over?
I think that I was just dealing with a coach in particular that just like didn't have the most healthy coaching habits and just kind of went about things in a very toxic way, like making rude comments about like my body and like things like that, and mainly just kind of punishing me for the sole reason that I wasn't always able to make it to practice all the time. One, because it was a 30-minute drive, and two, I was doing high school gymnastics, so I'm not going to drive 30 minutes to practice for 30 minutes to drive another 30 minutes home to go do 3 hours of gymnastics again. Like, if I'm doing my skills and doing my routines, it should be okay that I'm going to miss practice because I'm still doing what I'm supposed to be doing. But because they weren't seeing it, they would kind of pick on me whenever I would be there, or they would just like wouldn't coach me. So it kind of just made it very unenjoyable for me, and I just would be very scared about going there. But I felt like because I was there for so long, I couldn't leave. And then I think it was Hannah. I think you were, well, it was kind of Hannah and Eva that were kind of like, you should try it out. Like, and I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. And then I remember trying it out just one night with you guys, one practice. And I was like, I love it. I love it here. This atmosphere is so much better. I'm happier. I feel like way more welcomed. Like, my coaches are talking to me in a positive way. Like, what is this? Like, I haven't been coached like this in so long. And it just was like a completely different atmosphere that just kind of motivated me more. And because of it, I actually started going to practice. Like, I switched gyms and I actually would show up to practice like every day, which was a very rare thing for me, because once I like hit my sophomore year, I would literally probably go like once every other week, and it was like really bad. And yeah, so I think it was mainly just the fact that I wasn't being coached in a positive way. Like, if you're being coached that way in like a negative manner, it's not going to make you enjoy the sport. It's not going to motivate you, and it's not going to like get you to where you want to be if you actually do enjoy the sport, which is why I hated it for so long until I switched gyms.
Yeah, and that's very good. And I think that the timeline here is like, so just for people listening who obviously aren't part of our gym, it was like 2000, what, 10, Eva? Is like when you were, or not 7, 8, 9, that area when you were?
So yeah, so 2009, it was August of 2009. I took the job and as associate director, and let's see.
2013, I joined.
2000, yeah, I was like counting.
Yeah.
It was 2013. Yeah, because I remember there was a lot. We did so much to clean up so many things. And we got to like 2011. We had done, we'd completely reorganized the gym. Do you remember that, Hannah? We did like a whole reno and just like rearranged all the equipment and got some new equipment. And that was 2011. That was huge because that really helped us take the safety to the next level. We had the setup is everything in your gym. And there were so many things that were just inefficient. Like, we had high bars dismounting into walkways. And there were so many things that were just, that we could actually avoid if we just rearranged. So we rearranged. So that was a huge step. Then we got to 2012. And I was feeling like, okay, these kids are talented. They're working hard. They're showing up every day. We've made some good changes. They're really starting, like we had already done some of the groundwork to kind of get everybody on the right level. And parents were getting used to the new move up process that, the move ups aren't political. We move your kids up when they're ready. So like, we were just like turning the parents around, and the kids were really getting used to the consistency, which was really nice. We had done a little house cleaning with some staff that really just weren't fitting the the philosophy. And it was time for me to hire some new staff, mostly because you guys were starting to do some higher level skills. And it was like me and one other coach that were really capable of spotting some of the like big girl high bar skills. And I was like, I'm thinking about some of your former teammates that were just taller than me, like just bigger humans than me. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to spot that bar to bar release without catching myself. You know what I mean? Like it got to a point where I was like, I need some muscle behind this. And so I was kind of like, I need someone bigger and stronger than me, or I need someone else to help me with this. And I wasn't sure who that person was going to be. And then Dave like walked through the door miraculously because he had taken on an internship upstairs in the physical therapy department. And he was like, oh my God, I didn't even know this was here. This is amazing. Blah, blah, blah. Like his true Dave self, like talking 1,000 miles per minute. And I was like, yes, you're the one. Like in that moment, I wanted to be like, you're hired. I don't even know your name, but like, you're so excited about this that you're hired. At that time, there was like a giant stack of paperwork that you had to fill out to be an employee. It was all like handwritten. It's all online now, obviously, but handwritten. And it usually took new employees at least a week and a half to get, all the tax forms filled out. And I'm always, I was chasing people down constantly to give me their IDs. When I tell you he turned around this entire stack of paper in 24 hours, I'm not kidding you. Like he was ready to go. And I was like, okay, this is going to be great. And we did like a little BS interview up front. Remember that, Dave? We sat one of the little round tables at the cafe up front. And I was like, I'm going to like interview this guy and he's going to really think he's interviewing. But like, I already had him like in the system. So, but he didn't know yet. So, and so, yeah, I mean, when Dave came along, I think I was pretty honest about where we were at in the gym and knowing we needed to take it to the next level. And at this point, everybody was feeling like, we couldn't go bigger. We couldn't be better. We couldn't in a lot of ways, not just from a skill standpoint, but just, there were some kids that wanted college gymnastics. There were some kids that just wanted to come and be good teammates and do great gymnastics and then be done their senior year. We kind of like had this mix of goals going on, and it was really hard to structure a practice with so many optionals that had so many different goals, so many things that they wanted to do. So, I was really kind of running out of steam a little bit. Like I had just worked my tail off for so many years trying to keep all the pieces together and like really needed some new energy to come in, some new inspiration. And Dave was exactly that. So that was 2013, Dave.
Yeah. And I think it's good for me to slightly add in here is that the reason I sought out this gym in particular is because I had worked in other gyms club that I just didn't feel as though like it was a good vibe. And like, I felt like my personal values were not in line with the gym's values. I felt as though it was very, very hardcore. It was very, very like mean, to Heather's point. Like I felt like sometimes they would want me to be really strict with the kids and be really, really like aggressive, like of how hard we are going and structure and on the minute and you're always moving. And it's just not my personality. Like I'm like quite more chill than I think some of those gyms were. So I learned a lot from those gyms, but I just didn't feel like in my gut, like it was somewhere where I wanted to spend 20 to 30 hours per week, especially when a lot of the kids were having tough times. So I feel like I left those gyms in the pursuit of this, which was great because of the value system. And it seemed like you were doing so much great work to care about them as humans before just gymnasts. But I will say accountability at this point, like for the first 2 years, is I did bring with me a large ego that I was like somehow better than the other coaches because I'd come from these gyms and that I knew how to spot and I just finished my doctorate. Like all this stuff that I look back now makes my skin crawl. And I thought that I was doing a better job, but I brought with me some very much like, hardcore mentalities. And I remember when we tried to change some of the little things to begin with about the way we did strength, the way we did structured practice, like some of that stuff, it was very, very awkward because it was like me kicking the door in with you trying to be like, this is how we're going to do everything. And everyone's like, yeah, all right, whatever, bro. You know, it was like very, very reluctant. So,
and you just were like, go hard or go home. You know, like you had so many great ideas. And all the things that you wanted to implement made sense, but it just didn't make sense to do it all at once. You know, like we had to give these guys, you know, bites to chew on first and kind of get used to a new way and new drills and a new strength program. But you were just like, we got to change this, we got to change this, we got to change this, and trying to just peanut butter a new philosophy, you know, over the whole thing all at once. And it's like, we just weren't ready for that. I mean, I was ready for it. I was like, let's do it. But we had to be careful to like help people along the process. And so I think that, you know, I mean, maybe some of it was ego driven. I don't know. But I think you were just really, you saw the potential, you saw where it could go. And you were just trying to snap your fingers and make it happen. And you were thinking, I think at the time that because you were new and had come with some experience that this gym didn't have, that like everybody should just fix it and change it and listen to you. And what you quickly discovered is that before anyone's listening to anything that you're going to say, there has to be that level of trust built up. There has to be that coach athlete relationship that's appropriate, that's caring, that's respectful, responsible, and honest. And you were like, what? And just kind of, not that you didn't care about those things, but you were like, but all these things, like we have to just change all these things. And I was like, whoa, time out. Like these kids have to get to know you as a person. These kids have to feel like they can relate to you. And so I think we backed it up a little bit. I was like, can we play some games? Like, can you do something silly and like fish flop over the vault? Like, what was that thing that you used to do?
I don't know. Yeah.
Run and
the giant fish.
Do a giant fish.
I'm trying to hold back my laughter because part of me is definitely like, yes, it was ego, and that I was assuming that everyone was just going to jump on board and be like, oh, like, yeah, we'll just follow what this guy says. But I laughed so hard because I thought that, and like for 2 weeks, nobody would do skills with me. Nobody wanted to get spotted until Maddie, Hannah's sister, who was like the wild cowboy, was like, yeah, I'll do some giants. Let's go. She's like, whatever. What happened? She actually said, she's like, yeah, YOLO, let's go. And I was like, my girl, let's roll. Right. But nobody else wanted to do anything with me because they didn't know who I was. And so I had to earn that trust over multiple months. But I want to know, because I think Hannah was the only one who was here during that time period when we were like, I joined and like we were starting to realize like things needed to change, but it wasn't. So Hannah, do you have any experiences from that like year gap, that first year?
I feel like I remember when you came to our gym, because when we were like, I just remember stretching in like the corner where we used to have to stretch before practice or whatever. And it's like when someone new walks into your gym, especially, there's not a lot of guy coaches. So everyone's like, who is that? And it's like a celebrity just walked in, and we're like trying to figure out who it is, why they're talking to Eva, why they're talking to so-and-so. And then me and a few other gymnasts had gone to the camp you worked at. So we figured out who you were and remembered you.
Right? It was you and Adrian and someone else? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Kara too, because Kara had the leotard with
signed Kara's
signature. We were like 10, so
yeah, it was amazing.
I thought it was so fun because we got to do cool like release moves with you at camp. So I think I remembered that at least, you know. So it's like, I feel like, well, that sounds very like Maddie, so I'm not surprised that that's a memory you have about Maddie, because I'm sure, although you're new and exciting, it's also like, ooh, can I trust them? Like, why is, I guess if we were hearing some things you wanted to do, like if anyone comes in and tries to change something, your like immediate reaction is to be like, I don't know about that. And even when you're young and you're so used to how things have been going, I think that that's hard for all of us to jump on board, like you said. I'm trying to think if I remember the fish flopping thing.
Yeah, that was my go-to tension.
And I remember ships and sailors. After you said game, that's a game you brought to our gym. That's great.
That was a legendary game. And what was the rock paper scissors game? I forget what it's called.
Oh yeah,
that game was amazing too. Anyways, so yeah, I think I think we should jump forward 1 or 2 more years because that's when everybody was at the gym at the same time. And for me personally, like I was so blissfully ignorant to like the fact that there were still a lot of things that needed to be sorted out like those first 2 years. And it wasn't until like 2014 or 15 when I think Taylor was there and Hannah was there and Heather, like you would join the next year. But for me personally, like I want to like definitely for listeners in the podcast that might be coaches, like a lot of times we focus on the fact that like the athletes are unhappy or the parents are unhappy. But like when I tell you the coaching staff was like, this sucks, I don't want to work here. Like during the years when we were kind of like all there, that was what I felt. That was like my final, like, you know, selfishly, unfortunately, was like my final be like, dude, we have to do something because like nobody wanted to come to practice. Like me and Jess were fighting all the time because I was just like, you know, couldn't see past my own, like, you know, toes. I was so egotistical with that kind of stuff. I was the only one making the lesson plans. And so for me, the vibe at practice was what made me really want to be like, dude, we have to like ask them what's going wrong and like figure out what we can do to change it. But I don't know. I also remember a lot of injuries, Eva, like during that kind of period of time of like trying to think we had everything going on. But like, I remember like Taylor's hip was like a problem here and there. And like somebody else had a back thing, like 3 of the girls had back pain and somebody else's elbow, like Chloe's elbow always hurt. And I was like, what is happening right now? Like this is not working. So I don't know. Let's start with Taylor. When you were there and the vibe maybe was not the best, is there anything in particular that you can remember that we were like, were awkward moments at practice? Like I think back to a lot of like gossip fests and bickers, like talking behind people's backs and stuff. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no. So I feel like I kind of remember like my first couple of weeks when I like came back to the Y and everything. And, you know, I'm kind of awkward at first. So I'm just like really like shy and reserved. So I was just kind of observing like the way everything was going. And I definitely feel like there was like a decent amount of like attitude from like certain gymnasts and everything. And like, I don't know, certain like little like cliques almost. So I was kind of like nervous to like jump back into it and everything. But kind of to Heather's point earlier, like switching from my other gym, it was kind of like a breath of fresh air just because of what I had been used to. So I have kind of like a skewed perspective in that sense. And then I guess like moving forward to when things like, you know, started to change and everything, retrospectively, you can kind of see back and like see what was going wrong then, which is like interesting. So I guess that's what I have to say for that.
Yeah. The gossip was, I think the gossip and like what I deem is like, I don't know, avoiding problems and just like not talking behind people's backs, but just like ignoring people. You know what I mean? Like when problems would come up or conflict would come up, I would, instead of dealing with the issue, like a coach or a gymnast or a parent, I would just ignore people and be like, oh, it'll go away. Right. And I think a lot of the gymnasts had that too. They saw us doing that. And like, I can think of a few people who would like bicker back and forth while they were standing in beam during lineups and warm-ups. And I would like, hey guys, calm down. And they would just like be catty towards each other and like really clicky and gossipy. And it made like the vibe so weird because no gymnastics actually got done and it was not fun at all. Like personally for me, I noticed that between the coaches and I also noticed that between like the gymnasts sometimes was tough. I don't know, Hannah, do you have any thoughts to weigh here? Because I think it's the same time you were around, obviously.
Yeah, I think part of the time I was part of the problem because it's easy when other people are doing it, like to jump in. Like a few of my friends who like would talk in a different language, you know, like things like that.
I forgot about that. That was the worst. I was like, they're definitely talking about me.
It got you. That was like, we're like, ooh, no one will know what we're talking about. And then Eva knew the language. So then that went out the window. So, but I think that I have a lot of memories. I really liked going to gymnastics every day. Like I always worked hard, but I also have a lot of memories of like being part of the gossip or hearing part of the gossip and unfortunately like being interested in it just because it was part of our gym at that time. I think like it was normal. And when I was younger and I looked up to the older girls, that's what they were all doing too. So I think that as we got to be the older kids, I don't think until like probably junior and senior year, I was like, wow, I need to think about what I'm saying right now because there's level 4 right there. So I definitely remember that. And I'm sure Taylor coming into that would be like, whoa, this is a lot.
It's like you're watching Mean Girls right now.
And I had 2 sisters and I was not very nice to them. So that doesn't help my situation. Yeah. So I heard Taylor's like, who is this girl being so mean to them?
I think this highlights like how important it is to like everybody has their accountability piece, but also like how other people watch, right? Like I remember that a lot about like, I didn't think about at the time, but I remember like, man, what are the girls seeing when like me and Jess or Eva are like, or Mel are like bickering with each other and kind of like I don't know, not like standoffish, I guess is the best word. Like we would set an event like up together and I'd be like, no, we're not doing that. And like, I don't know. I feel like that if you're not modeling the behavior that you would like to see in everybody else, like how can you expect it to get better? So it's like, if the coaches take on a responsibility to be more like openly communicating and stuff like that, and the gymnasts will probably see that like gossiping and stuff like that's probably not the best. I think it like fosters a lot of better communication by like the way that you lead by example like that. And I think personally for me, that was something that I noticed, that when everybody did their own little part to like, you know, actually deal with a problem, I would actually talk with Alana when she was upset and I would try to understand what was going on. And like Eva would talk with the parents. I would watch her talk with the parents at parent meetings, or I would see you guys like handle a conflict with like one of the younger girls, particularly because we had a huge age gap that was like 17 to 12 because some of the younger athletes were super talented. So they were training like 8 and 9 alongside you guys. And I remember like when you guys started to help them out, other people saw. So that's one thing that always stuck out to me is like, when we were able to have better one-on-one conversations, I felt like that was when a lot of things started to get better because we weren't afraid to talk about like the real issues about what was going on. I know that was me, but I know Heather, when you joined, was that still going on when you jumped in, or was that like kind of over?
Okay, no. So when I joined, all I remember was like, just compared to like how it was at like my old gym, like obviously like you don't really talk back to your coaches. You don't really like lash out kind of, just because it was a little more of an intimidating atmosphere. Whereas I remember like there was just some gymnasts that would kind of just like huff and puff and like kind of just like overreact about some things. And I was like, what is that? Like, what is going on? Like if I was at my old gym, like this would never be allowed. So I think like that was definitely something big that I noticed. And there definitely was like some drama. Like I remember sometimes I would ask like Hannah to be my partner and someone would get mad at me because I was like taking her away. And I was like, oh my God, but she's like my one real friend that I really have here. I'm sorry. Like, but I think there was just like a little bit of drama that didn't get really de-escalated sometimes. And it was definitely just something that I wasn't really used to. And I definitely think injuries were definitely kind of prominent when I first got there. Like I had 2 little injuries myself that kind of like wasn't something that I was used to really having. But then over time, we definitely like sorted through that and I got into like the best shape of my life. And I like had very minimal pains, aches and pains and stuff. But definitely I'd say like injuries and like the drama was probably like the 2 big things that I noticed when I first came to the gym.
Yeah. And we can talk about the gossip and the drama first. I think a lot of people struggle with that. And Eva, this is like one of Eva's like superhero powers. I have no idea how she does this so well, but she was able to teach me how to have better communications with you guys. Cause I mean, at the time, besides like one other person, and for some of the time, I was the only guy in the gym as the coach, right? Because the men's program had not continued anymore. But like, it was very hard for me to understand how to like talk with people like that when I wasn't part of like a coaching staff already. And so, but the injuries and stuff, we'll come back to, because that was when we changed the strength program and we started asking like more people for help. And that was a whole to do in itself, how we got through that together. But Eva, let's start with like, I mean, you've talked about notorious in the podcast, how to like handle these conflicts, but when we had those little gossip dramas and stuff, how did we go about maybe constructively dealing with those issues? Because the pendulum swung. We went from trying to be hardcore and like force it almost, and then we got like so worried about the whiplash that we went to like conflict avoidance completely, where like people were just, it was like, you know, what's the phrase, like the monkeys were running the show. Like I felt like everybody was just doing whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted, and talking back. And then we got in the middle where it was like, okay, we're not going to allow this behavior, but we'll still listen to you and help you at the same time. And so I don't know, you so wonderfully did that. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, thank you for your kind words. You know, the drama starts at the top. And I remember the day that I realized that I was just noticing how dramatic and cliquey and gossipy our higher levels were being, and that I was disappointed that the level 5 group was standing there staring at them, listening to every word of it. And then later that night, I was doing the same thing about our coaching staff that were not fulfilling the basic expectations of the job. And I went home and I was like, you know what? This starts with me. Like, these kids are acting like this because I'm acting like this. So I need to do something about it first. If these coaches aren't fulfilling the basic expectations of the job to help keep the kids safe and provide the best quality experience, then why are they working for me? What are we doing? Why am I holding on to them? So it was time. It was time to help some move on, to find something else that was a better fit for them. There were a few tough conversations with staff about how, okay, this is the direction we're going in. These are the things we're going to do. These are the changes I'm going to make. Because I'm making these changes, I'm expecting that you will all make these changes as well. I'm going to give everyone a chance. It's a clean slate. If whoever can't figure it out needs to just move on. And if you can't move on yourselves, I'll help you do that, because we all have to really move in the right direction here. So tough conversations. Some chose to grow with us in a positive direction, and some moved on, and that's okay. That's what I expected. As soon as we made that change ourselves, I saw the culture change amongst our gymnasts. Because what did we do? We turned around, we came back to practice, and we started talking to you guys about how your mentors in the gym, whether you like it or not, whether you realize it or not, that every moment that you're in the gym, these kids are looking up to you. Look at this gym. This was pre-COVID. This was way before COVID. We were packed. And everybody was practicing together, and they're looking up to you, even when you don't realize that that's what they're doing. They're listening because they think you're cool. They want to know what you're saying. They're watching your behavior. They're watching the way you treat your coaches, the way you treat your teammates, the way you treat yourselves. And that was huge. It was huge for us to start first and realize that I needed to be better at the way I treated my own staff, and then to turn around and talk to you guys about how to be better with each other and how to set the example for the next generation of leaders in the gym. So when you're at the top of the food chain, you're at the top of the food chain. Like, you've earned that spot, but heavy lays the crown, as they say, right? Like, it's a lot of pressure. And there are times, and I remember having this conversation with Hannah, like, it's tough. It's tough being the one everyone's looking up to sometimes. And it's a lot of pressure, but you know what? It's part of leadership. And some people are cut up for it. Some people aren't. That's okay. But this is what we learn in a sport like gymnastics. And I think that it just all starts from the top. And I've seen a major change in the gym in that way in the past 6 years, I would say, 8 years, maybe. You know, it's been massive. And it was really tough. I mean, like, I remember when you guys were all graduated and we didn't have like a big senior group coming up. What year was it that we graduated? Like 9 seniors, and then we had like 1 or 2 seniors, and those 1 or 2 seniors were really struggling. They were really struggling to be strong leaders. And I think it's because they were part of that generation where their mentors were hanging around, gossiping and being icky to each other. And that's how they were acting as leaders. And it was tough. That was a tough year. And so that was like, it was like, oh God, how do we manage? How do we manage without our strong leaders in the gym? It's like, it's more than the people that are getting paid to lead the gym, right? It's like, it's a team effort. The leadership is a team effort. And so helping everyone understand that is really key in my mind. But it takes time, and it takes tough conversations, and
take the words out of my mouth. That's what I was going to say, is like, I think the 2 themes that when I take a big step back now, especially like thinking about before this podcast, is the shared accountability that everybody kind of took on, is like Hannah was saying, like, oh, I'm part of the problem too. If I'm gossiping, I'm, all the coaches doing that. But also I think the time with these 3 in particular in that group was, I like learned through practice how to be uncomfortable in conversations, like how to have tough conversations, and like just like kind of like live in that murkiness of like, oh, this is weird, like we're talking about like injuries, we're talking about like someone who's unhappy, or someone who's not getting a skill, someone who's not moving up. And I remember particularly, Eva, one of the athletes that is like one of our horror stories is we let her move up because of a lot of parent pressure and because everybody else had moved up to level 8 and we knew she wasn't ready. We moved her up and it came crashing down when she got a back injury and she ended up quitting and she was really unhappy. And I felt so bad because like, oh my God, we rushed it. Like we shouldn't have done it. But that taught me how to have hard conversations that were a little uncomfortable for this group in particular. And then when they left, because we had worked, like, I think we remember telling each other in staff meetings, like, do the harder thing when it's the right thing to do. Like, don't avoid that conversation. Like, don't just walk away from that person who's upset, like all that kind of stuff. It like taught us the skill set of having hard conversations. And I think when the athletes saw us having those hard conversations and not ignoring people or just saying like, we'll do it because I told you so, or like, well, that's just what needs to get done, like figure it out, like that harsh coaching mentality, I think it allowed them to kind of feel more trust to be able to tell us stuff like my back's starting to hurt or like, you know, something's going on at school, I just can't do this assignment right now. And so, but the only way you do that is through practice, right? You can't read your way into that. You can't motivate yourself into that. You have to just have hard conversations. And I feel like personally, a lot of things changed when I started to be able to have that skill set. But I don't know. I feel like there were a lot of times, particularly I'm thinking about Taylor and your hip before nationals, when you hurt your hip really bad and like wanted nothing more than to compete, had worked so hard, was so excited. And like everything in my soul knew it was a terrible idea. And I had to be the bad guy and I had to like, you know, pull the plug and be like, nah, we're just doing one event and we're going to water it down. Like you can still come. But like in the moment, Taylor, you were like pissed. You were so mad at me, but it was because I learned from the previous years what can happen when you let that go away. So I don't know, Taylor, what do you think about it?
I was so upset. I was so mad. And I think the meet that year was like in California and I was so excited because it was like far away and seemed like such a fun meet and everything. And then my hip was just like so bad. I remember it just like happened all of a sudden in warm up and then I just like couldn't walk. And I was just like, this isn't great. And then I thought it would kind of go away, but it just didn't for a while. And I remember it was like that whole summer that I was just like rehabbing my hip and you were helping me out with that and everything. But yeah, no, I was definitely upset. And I think I tried to do, I think the one event I did was beam. And then I asked if I could like do my handspring series. And you were just like, probably not. Like, that's probably not the best idea. And then, yeah, I was just very upset because like you said, I just worked so hard. And then this injury just like, you know, kind of stopped me in my tracks. But, you know, it ended up being a good thing because I worked on bars a lot that summer, which I definitely needed. So, you know, I think like with the honesty with your coaches, one, you learn to trust them more in their decisions because, you know, it ended up being a good thing in the long run. And I needed to rest my hip because later down the road, college gymnastics was college. So
yeah, I can say this too.
Reward.
I learned this lesson from Adri, right? Because Adri had a back problem. And at that time, I was not able to kind of like have a hard conversation and deal with it. I was like, again, trying to like, just, I don't know, find other ways that weren't like, no, we should just stop. Like I was trying to find everything we could possibly do. And I let her go. And she ended up having like a horrible back problem. And she missed out on college gymnastics because of how bad it got. And so I unfortunately learned the lesson the hard way. But like, I don't know. I remember like being before nationals and like normally when you would like tell me about something hurting and like if that was 5 years prior, I would have just like found some way to avoid that conversation and be like, oh, it's just like, let's just keep going. Like we're okay. But it was only because I'd had those conversations. Kara's shoulder as well was another situation with that. But it was because of that, I only like had the spine to stand on and be like, what does my gut tell me? This is not a good idea. And I knew that college gymnastics was in your future. So it was hard, but like there's been conversations with all that. Another one that just popped in my head is when I started needing to ask like for more help on harder advanced skills. Hannah was doing Yurchenkos one day and she did like a Yurchenko and a timer or maybe flipped. And I was just like, I said something, but it was like the exact same thing I said every time when I didn't know what to say because I couldn't figure it out. I was like, I don't know why it's not a layout. And she was like, well, how is that? And I was like, I said something, you always say that. And I was like, yeah, I do. Oh no. But like the next day I texted Nick Ruddick. That's when like I started calling Nick more often. I was like, all right, bro, I don't know how to teach you Yurchenko layout really well. Like I'm clearly over my head right now. I need help. And he saw the video. So he's like, yeah, you have some work to do. But like, I remember like that, like just not feeling in my gut. I was like, oh, this sucks. I don't know how to teach this all the way through. Cause I mean, like Heather was trying to do fulls and stuff. And I was like, there's no way I know how to teach these things the right way. So that for me was a huge gut check. It was that moment of like, ooh, that doesn't feel good at all, that like we need to change something. And so I started asking more and more for help after that. But yeah, I don't know, Hannah, do you remember that at all or no?
I remember that. I remember being like, what does that mean? I don't know what that means.
I was using all the crappy, like I don't know, like the fake coaching corrections that you say just when you don't know. And I was like, just set higher, just, run, you just we gotta go. Just hit that board harder. Right. And you're like, it literally is not helpful at all. I
think there's like something with my like shoulders or something. And I was like, I don't understand. And you always tell me that, and I don't get it. Because I guess from a gymnast standpoint, you're frustrated already because you're not doing the skill the way you want to do it, and it doesn't look right. And then when you don't understand the correction, and then I guess you didn't know that what you were correcting either, that everyone is just like, what's happening?
Yeah, those are called panic corrections for any coaches that are listening. So if you see something and you have no idea how to help, and you just yell out random buzzwords like set higher, or like throw your arms, or like look at the ground, like just do some research and maybe find somebody to help you learn that skill correctly. So, because the problem with me is that I could spot really well. That was like the blessing and the curse, is that I remember this exactly with Heather too. Heather was learning blind fulls, and I could make Heather do a blind full every single time perfect. But as soon as she tried it on her own, it was like squirrely, right? And I couldn't like figure out how to help her. But I was just like, well, if I spot her, I can do blind full, and then half turn shoot over, and this looks sick. Right. Like I'd put Maddie into handstands every time. I was like, shoot over hand, kip cast, half turn, shoot over hand. I was like, this looks amazing. And then she never competed it because I was just spotting her through it. So the difference between over spotting someone and actually knowing how to coach was a huge problem that I had. So shout out Nick if he's out there. I don't know, Eva, do you remember those? I remember those like painful moments.
I do. I remember the painful conversation I had to have with you at one point about how it's time to back off the spotting a little bit, because I could see that you were doing the skills for them. And while there are great benefits to that, because it helps them build confidence, and, you're spotting for shaping, and it's so valuable to a certain point. And then it's like, okay, well, we're trying to put this in the routine in a couple months. So we're going to start, backing off a little bit. And you fought me. Do you remember fighting me on this?
Yeah, because I was terrified and insecure.
Oh my God, you fought me tooth and nail. And I was like, okay, something's going on here. And so I remember suggesting that maybe you back off slowly. So it's like, okay, if you're double hand spotting the bar to bar release, like maybe, just do a couple lighter, like single hand. Can we just back off little by little, start peeling some mats away instead of being 8 feet high on the spotting block? Like, can we take a spotting block away? And I can probably count on one hand how many times you were like truly upset with me. I think this was one of the times, because you kind of bombed out of the office, like not your happiest Dave face.
And I'll tell you the reason too, because this was another big changing point for me. Was at that point in time, it was the Dave show. I was spotting and doing that stuff for myself, because it was like, I was like, oh, look at these cool skills that I can spot. Like, look at Alana doing packs. This is awesome. Right. Like, but it was all for me. Like, that's the problem, is that it wasn't, I was trying to teach these skills and get them in routines because it would make them reach their potential, and it's awesome and I'm proud of them. It was literally like I was worried about what people would think about me if somebody crashed at a meet. And I was worried about, shift was just starting then. And so like a lot of people were kind of like watching at meets when we traveled and stuff. And it was totally insecurity out of my point of view. So when you did that, you poked at a really sensitive nerve, which was Dave's insecurity and ego. And after slowly I learned, how important it is to make someone do it on their own. That's where it came from. And so now I
remember saying, so how much of that pack is you and how much of it is her?
All of it.
And you were like, and I was like, I'm just wondering, like, if the meet were tonight and you were to completely back off, would you let her compete it? And you were like, no. I was like, then you have to start backing off now, because we're competing in 2 months. So it's like, I don't think you could argue with me in that moment, but it was like, it was tough. And I remember the frustration everybody felt, gymnasts included, because it was a little bit of a false sense of skill and hope for the gymnasts. When every time Dave is like carrying you through the skills and you're hitting the handstand perfectly every time, it's like, well, I can shoot overhand perfectly every time. He starts backing off and it gets a little wobbly. Or we're not quite sure how to use the strength that we have. I mean, you guys were getting stronger, but I'm not sure Dave was letting you use the strength that he was working so hard at making sure you were building, because you were muscling them through. And so that was tricky. But I think that there were also great benefits that came with it. I mean, you had strength I didn't have to be able to teach them how to blindfold in the proper shape, right?
Yeah.
And so it wasn't all bad. I mean, it was very
Right.
necessary, but we just needed to kind of like plan it out a little bit more and know when to back off.
I think it was a combination of not really understanding perfect technique and then not forcing people to do it well. And this goes into the safety and the injuries part of it too, is like, I didn't truly understand the exact perfect steps for doing Yurchenko well or doing a nice double back. Right. And this is the worst story ever. And I hate it, but like not teaching Alana how to tap properly into a double back, right, is my worst coaching nightmare of all time. I let her get away with a crazy scoop tap. She got all fired up in a meet once. She pulled in and we all know she broke her leg, right? That was like my gut just completely sank because now when I look back, I'm like, I should have told her, you're not competing that. You can't do that until you tap properly and you can't do it correctly. Like maybe it was a freak accident. Yes. But like a lot of that comes from like, you know, a lot of double backs where you get real ramped up and you just pull in. And so I think back to those moments of like really having to go back and swallow my pride and learn when to stop using spotting as a crutch. But also on the injury side of it is like the ability to change the strength program and make that like very new for what was in gymnastics, which was like lifting weights and doing not only gymnastics conditioning. For me, that was like a clear sign that that was something that would help all of these problems with culture and stuff. But I remember the pushback from parents and you, and like, I mean, that's a misconception I think people have of our gym. Like when I talk on the podcast is that we don't really train that hard, but man, that stuff was hard, man. Like those conditioning circuits were brutal sometimes. And I remember how like hard it was to get people to like really work hard in conditioning and still make it be safe. And like, there's definitely times we overdid it, but that's the next thing I want to talk about is because I think a lot of people misinterpret positive coaching and like being nice is like never training hard and don't push the athletes. And like, I don't know. I think there's I think it's unsafe to train really hard skills without doing the proper strength program. So I don't know, Taylor, what are your memories first when you came and did the strength program? And then Hannah can talk about it, how it changed.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I came in like 2016 and I feel like that's kind of when your strength like you started to like print them out and put them in the binders and all of that. And I just remember it was like so much different than what I had been doing before, because at my other gym, it was like, all right, let's do 500 hollow flutters. And then let's go ahead and do 100 block pushes. And then let's jump on the resi 300 times just so you feel like you're going to die. There's just like no rhyme or reason. It was just kind of like to punish us. And I feel like that's a big thing that you've definitely talked about before too. In the podcast, like, you know, like there's like conditioning shouldn't be a punishment. It should be to assist your gymnastics and help you, you know, achieve a higher level and all of that and do those big skills. So, and honestly, all that stuff kind of got me into like strength and conditioning to begin with. So it's again, kind of cool to look back retrospectively and see like how that helped my gymnastics. Like when I started doing those strength programs, and how I was able to do those bigger skills and have more power in my routines. Cause I definitely didn't have that before. So I feel like I kind of remember more of that, less of like the old day of conditioning, just cause I wasn't really there for it. But, I just remember that helped me a lot.
And that was one of the things that Eva and I talked about is like, we're never going to use conditioning as a punishment, but we're also not going to barter with conditioning as a reward, right? That was something that I think a lot of gyms sometimes do is like, if you hit your routines, we'll get no strength tonight. But on the other side, like it was like, if you don't do your routines, you have 5 extra rope climbs. And we made it a really clear line in the sand that conditioning is what it is. We all do it. It's part of it. You don't have to do anything. I'm not going to make you climb the rope. But in 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, when you don't have the performance you want, or maybe you're hurt, like we're going to have a conversation about how your effort maybe on that put in. And I think that was really hard for people to wrap their heads around because before Eva, it was either a punishment or a reward when things were bad or good. And it really changed things quite a bit. So I remember like, even like, oh my God, like last year, somebody been like, oh, if we hit all our bar routines, can we like not do cardio tonight? I was like, absolutely not. Like we're doing cardio, whether you hit 100% or you hit 0%, because the reason you're hitting bar routines is because of this, right? So I don't know, Hannah, what do you think? Because you definitely saw the beginning when I first started and then when we changed things quite a bit to like your last years.
I feel like, well, before when I was younger, it's super typical gymnastics, conditioning, like so many sit-ups and I don't know, way different. And I think that when we started doing more strength, it was exciting, but it was also like super duper hard. Like when you used to have us do those circuits, like all the way around, we'd play the music really loud. You try to make it so fun for us because it was horrible. It's horrible. It's so hard.
That's what we did at Springfield at like 9 a.m. on the men's team. That was like a tradition that we did. So I was like, oh, I'll just bring it with us. And I was like, music will be fun. But like, I was like, dude, these are so bad. These are so bad.
And you would like do it with us and you would cheer us on and you'd encourage us to cheer each other on. I think that helped get our minds off the fact that, wow, this is, and one thing was when we did those we would like block push and like run back with like a partner and things. And you'd be like, 6 and 7 are the hardest. 6 and 7 are the hardest every time you tell us that. And I'd be like, okay, just get through these two. But I think that what was also a little frustrating is as hard as those were, we didn't see the effects right away. Like it was still frustrating in our skills, like feeling like we're at the same level we're at that we were before. So like kind of what's the point? So I guess it's good to note that it definitely takes time. Like I felt more powerful, like on vault, like definitely with my Yurchenko and things, but for technical, like, I don't know, on bars, it's like, oh, I'm doing the same skills I had before. So it takes a little bit on the gymnast side to like see a difference. And it's having like the confidence in your coaches after you've built that relationship to know like, okay, maybe this is going to work. And when it finally does, it's like so relieving because it's such hard work. It's so hard.
Yeah, and that's the other point along that is like, remember for 2 years we had Dave and Derek come in. I wasn't a strength coach then yet. I knew that I needed to learn that stuff, but I hadn't done that schooling. So we went to Treehouse and we had people come to us and they taught us how to do things properly. So it was the humility of the coaches to say like, hey, we need some help here. We know the gymnastics stuff, but we don't know that. But I'm curious now, how long do you think like the delayed effect was, like for me, for Taylor too, like between like when you started doing hard strength and when you actually noticed like, ooh, I feel like I'm actually better a little bit now. Nothing hurts as much.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I guess I wasn't like injury prone either. Like the only thing I did was like break bones. So I feel like that's not something I can really speak to because I always felt
There
like
were accidents.
strong. I like wasn't, I don't know, you know what I mean? But I also feel like vault was really hard for me. Like I was not a powerful gymnast. So I guess probably that like whole year where I was working really hard on Yurchenkos, but then also like looking back and thinking, oh, the reason I have it is probably because I actually have the strength to like push myself over the vault now. But also when we went to the gym, I would like look forward to that. I think that helped, like being with someone else, honestly, like getting the strength from a different coach that you're not used to made it like a little bit more exciting too. So even though you're asking for help, we're like, ooh, new people. And like we would look forward to the popsicles afterward and, you know, things like that. And we made friends with our bus driver. Like those are good times. Those are really good times.
Yeah, and that's definitely something else I hear. Because it's funny because right now, a lot of people in gymnastics are going through that first summer that we had, which was like, oh, I'm gonna take an hour out of practice and go let somebody else teach me how to lift weights. Like, I don't know if that's a great idea. So a lot of people are living through that transformation we have now, and they say how like it's going to be miserable, it's going to be a waste of time. But everybody that I talk to that actually jumps off the cliff and does a summer lifting program or a hybrid model, they say it's like the best thing they ever did. It's a group bonding experience. It's so much fun. Like there's a lot of positive benefits to it that I think if people just tried it for a summer and got a good coach, right? Like Dave and Derek are like world-renowned strength conditioning coaches. So like we were lucky in that sense. But
I can totally relate to jumping off that cliff.
Yeah.
My biggest cliff was the day you walked in and said, we're going to have to take 2 hours away from balance beam practice so that we can
and bars
so that we can commute to the weightlifting gym and back. And we're just, you know, it'll just be 8 or 10 weeks over the summer. And I was like, what do you mean? Like this, I was like, no. And then I was like, okay, fine. I trust you. Yes, this is what we need to do, but that's hard, you know, like you have such a plan for the summer, where, you know, we're going to get these skills, we're going to train these kids, blah, blah, blah. We're going to do all these things, front tuck mounts all day, like just like so many plans. And so then I started calculating and I was like, part of my job is to ensure everybody's got equal time on, or enough time on each event every week. And so just getting there and back, like that was an hour. So it was an hour of just travel. And I'm like, that's such precious beam time. I don't understand. But you know what? It was 100% worth it. To Hannah's point about it being new and exciting, that was huge. It was a huge way to bring you guys together. It was a nice team bonding moment. It's, you know, I'm sure there are stories that you guys keep coming back to, memories of that time. And like, it's amazing what like a little popsicle at the end can do. Like on a hot summer day after lifting. And so I just wanted to throw that in there because for those coaches that are worried about jumping off that cliff, I hear you, but it's worth it in the end. And when you guys came back, and we started the season up again, I was like, oh my God, I saw the difference immediately. And I know I've said that before in previous podcasts, but it was so obvious to me who had done strength all summer, who had done weightlifting all summer, and who had not. And it only improved the balance beam experience from a coaching standpoint. And then also it was easier for you guys to stay on the beam and you got your skills. So it was fine. Like it wasn't actually lost time in the end.
Yep. Heather, what do you think? What is your experience from I guess you came from a pretty hard strength program, but like, I don't know, we were at a different level.
Yeah, no. The change was very different. Kind of like what Taylor said, like we would just like, it was like absurd numbers that were just like very repetitive, and it just like made no sense. Like we would do like 100 toe raises like each way, like as like our warm up. I'm like, why are we like killing my like calves before I'm even about to practice? Like this doesn't even make any sense. And then when I switched to our gym, your strength, I was like, oh my gosh, this is brutal. The cardio, I'm dying. But you would join in with us, and you would like put on the best playlist ever. So it would like make it a little better and a little more bearable to get through. And then when we started lifting, I think the best part about that was we had like a change of scenery and just like getting to go on a bus and like hang out with each other and like go lift. It was just like very exciting and fun and just different than what probably any of us have ever experienced before in like a gymnastics practice. So, and then like the guys that were coaching us or helping us, they were so motivating, and they like really helped us transition into that, and were just very helpful in making sure that we were doing everything we were supposed to. And they would just like hype us up. And it was kind of like a fun little competition with each other. We were like, who can like max out first? Like it was just so much fun, even though it was so hot in there. It was like probably the best experience. And I was literally in the best shape of my life. And I felt like I just became so much more powerful. And a lot of like those aches and pains that I was experiencing beforehand kind of just like dwindled away. But yeah, that was my experience.
Yeah, I think it's good because that was also like we tried to use that experience in the summer as a rocket ship to be like, we need to do more non-gymnastics group hangout things for the coaches and for the kids. Like we started doing like more just staff outings just to go hang out and relax and unwind, but also like movie nights and like game nights and like playing categories like once or twice a year. Like that made a massive difference, I think, in the next generations, because we realized how important it was to do non-gymnastics things. Like, I mean, you guys, like a lot of, in our situation, a lot of people are from different school systems and come from different towns to one gym. And so you don't see each other besides gymnastics. So like going to like play in a game night, or like we did like, we went on the giving tree. Like we have a giving tree where you like grab a card and you do something for someone less fortunate. We went to the mall together and like picked out, you know, gifts to give to people. Like little stuff like that went a long way. And like, I was just listening to some of the kids talking about their experiences who are graduating. Like not a single one like talked about this meet, I made this routine, or like this happened. It was all like, we went to movie night, or we went and we lifted. Like it was all like the things you would never think about were the most important. So that's one of my big my big suggestions. I always tell people, like, if you want a better culture along with what we've talked about, is like, make sure you're seeing the humans behind just the gymnast. Like when I started having more conversations about how's school going and like what, like, are things frustrating you? And like, not that I expect to be like your parent, but like just someone who cares about your life beyond just gymnastics, I think made a big difference in terms of like people being trusting to say my back's hurting, or like, I'm just not feeling it today. And I feel like that was something that made a big difference when we kind of, I don't know, tried to make the next step that way. So just personal. But Eva, do you remember that when we started to have those conversations and people would just randomly talk to us? Like I remember Lana in particular telling us some things. I was like, all right, you know, this is definitely for Eva, but this is, I'm glad you're telling me this, but let's try to make sure. But I never,
you'd be like, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, I never in a million years thought that some of the people would like start to tell us about problems they were having until we developed that trust with them.
Yeah. I do remember that. And I think a couple questions goes a long way, you know, on both ends. You know, sometimes it's like, even when the gymnasts come in and say, ask the coach, how was the day? there's something to that. You know, it's like sometimes the kids don't always understand how much preparation, how much work we're doing on the back end before they even walk into the gym, to set the stage for them to be successful that night. And sometimes it's been a super long day before they walk in at 5:30 for their practice. And so when they walk in and they're like, how was the day? Was it good? It's like, okay, it's good now because you're here and this is the fun part, you know? But sometimes it was kind of a grind just from an administrative standpoint. And then the best part of my day was always when you guys walked in, because it all made sense when you walked in. All the crazy admin stuff made sense. But I think that knowing how good that felt was motivation for me to turn around and ask questions of you guys, like, how was school? How's it going? How's your mom doing? You know, just like little things. And then it's like, oh, she actually cares about me. Like, oh, she's asking me about something that's not gymnastics related. But I think what really comes from it is, like Dave said, that open dialogue that allows for those moments when maybe you're not okay. Maybe it's been a rough day and you're exhausted, or maybe you didn't get great sleep last night, or maybe you just got into a fight with your brother. And that might help inform us about some kind of attitude that comes later, or something that's going wrong on an event, or we just can't catch the straddle back, or whatever it is. It's like, and then we can be like, okay, well, she's exhausted. Like, maybe she needs to go home and sleep. Or even just like, I remember looking at Jackie Veach one day and saying, are you okay, honey? Because she was kind of like this weird shade of green I've never seen. And she was just like, I have just bounced from one thing to the next thing to the next thing in true Jackie style. For those of you who know Jackie, and we love her so much.
Saved the world. I like
she's like
an entire organization. I got into
oh my God, she's amazing.
Like, yeah. And now
Jackie,
I'm here to practice.
Jackie for president. Yeah. But she had so much on her plate and somehow was able to manage it all, but had her days where it was like, she's like, I just bounced from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. Like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I haven't been able to mentally transition. And she was honest with me about it. And so I said, well, like, you just scored a 9.6 on floor. Why don't you go like take the floor practice and sit in my office and just like zen for a minute? She literally was like, can I have a coloring sheet? Like this, like it was summer camp. And I was like, here's some markers. Like, here's a coloring sheet. Like, whatever you need to do to zen, you do. And then she joined us for bars. So it's like, she probably avoided some kind of injury that day, right? Or avoided something, or had a better bar practice maybe, because she was able to kind of take that 45 minutes and recollect herself, kind of process everything that had happened throughout her day so that she could truly mentally make the transition to gymnastics. And that's so important. I think people underestimate, you know, the importance of mentally transitioning to gymnastics. We kind of physically get the leotard on and get there and warm up, but it's like, are the gymnasts mentally here? Are they mentally ready for this practice? We talk about mental preparation for meets. We talk about using mental imagery for success. All of that is wonderful. It all works. What about doing that for practice? Like, how are we mentally transitioning out of school or whatever we're coming from to get into the proper headspace for practice? And I think that that's something that we can all work harder at and remember to teach our gymnasts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really happy you said that, because that's the last topic I wanted to chat about, was like the shift in maybe mental health, or like, you know, focus and stuff that like all of us had, coaching staff and also kids and parents wise. Like, for me personally, selfishly, one of the biggest motivating factors to change the culture and try to do it is like, I just generally felt like crap coaching, right? Like, I was like super stressed out all the time. I didn't know how to help people, and I was getting burnt out as a coach. I like didn't have the emotional bandwidth to like have these long conversations and deal with these things, because it just wasn't working, right? It felt like you were like pushing a boulder uphill, and every time you get a little bit farther, it would roll back down 20 feet, right? And so I felt super burnt out, and I was going through a lot of mental health stuff where I just didn't want to be there anymore. And that's why like I had to go through quite a huge change. So I would love, like, lastly, just to maybe everybody share like maybe the difference in like how you were in either a previous setting, as in like a gym, or like before we made these big changes, and like what changed for you in terms of like, you know, your overall happiness or stuff like that, or changes that went on. Because I think that's still the elephant in the room in gymnastics, is that people, I mean, in society, but in general in gymnastics, is people are all about like the scores and the skills and the move ups and the levels, but they don't realize like it's not worth it if people are getting so much collateral damage on the way through. Like it's just, it didn't feel, for me, I can think of a couple people in particular who I remember when they graduated and they were kind of bitter or resentful. I was like, that is my fault. I did that. Like we did that as a gym. We have to be better. Like even if they're not going to college, they don't want to compete. Like if they leave and they don't want to come back to the gym or they're unhappy with us, like we need some serious work to do. And so that was for me a big change. But I don't know, Taylor, you want to start first and maybe chat about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, just going back to the whole theme of like risk versus reward, like sometimes you have to admit that you're not having the best day, and that ends up being better for you, just being honest and open. And I feel like in past environments, it's definitely been looked down on if you're injured or like, you're not having the best day in general. And you're just forced to like push through it. Like, you have to finish like these 10 beam series and land them all. And if you don't, then you have to start over, like that type of attitude versus like, all right, sure, you're not having the best day. How about you do a couple up onto a panel mat and, try to work on your technique. There are different ways to modify practices and make them beneficial to you. Even if you're not doing the full skill, there's ways to break it down. And I feel like that was a really important lesson. And you guys definitely were great with that. And as a gymnast, I just felt comfortable telling you, if I was injured or if I, wasn't having the best day. And there are always ways to like work around it. It's not just because if you're injured or you're not having a great day, you're weaker or you're worse than you were the day before. It's just part of the process because, progress isn't always linear. There's always ups and downs, and you guys were super understanding about that. So.
Yeah. And that's a good point too, because I remember pre our like, reckoning was like every day was hard. Like we had an assignment and we just go super hard every day. And there was really no wiggle room. It was like, this is what we're doing. Here's the speed. And if you can't keep up, like, good luck, like for like, definitely for like 6 or so months, I remember just hitting like a blistering pace of it's just unobtainable. And after we like read a little bit more and talked to some people, we learned about like, like planning practices to have an intentional light day. And I think back to those really hard strength days or strength weeks, we'd go 3 weeks where it's like, guys, we're just going to go for it. Like, but we're going to get a deload week, like planning a week where we're going to pull back and rest. Everyone's like, all right, light at the end of the tunnel. Like I can make it to that like rest week a little bit. So that's just another small piece of advice. But Hannah, what do you think?
I think one of the biggest things that I like took away from it was like probably like halfway through high school, beginning of high school, we would have like meetings about our goals and not just like what we want, like what skills we wanted, but like what do you want to do? And I guess that was like the first time I'm like, what do I want to do with gymnastics? Like, why am I even doing gymnastics? So I think just having those conversations made like me more intentional in my gymnastics, but also then I could carry that to like other things, like why am I doing this and why do I want to do this and like what's the goal at the end of it. And like Eva said, like everyone was a little all over the place, so I had the freedom to choose what I wanted to do with it. And it's like making that choice and then working with your coaches to like set up for success eventually. And I definitely felt supported in my own decision, and like then I think I can apply that to my real life now. I think about like, oh, what's my goal with this? And then what are the steps that are going to take me to get there? Like kind of like backwards planning it, I think is something I definitely took away from when we were really working hard and trying to like think more than just like skill.
Yeah, that was the origin. Your guys' group was the origin story of having the more like structured every year. We have a meeting, like a year in review. Like I remember the first group with like Britt Berteau when we all sat down and it was like after season. And I was like, all right, guys, no hard feelings. Tell us exactly what you think. Tell us what we need to work on next season. Is there something as a coaching staff we need to get better at? And Britt's face is amazing. She was like, what do you mean? Like, I can tell you anything? And I was like, yeah, man, lay it on me. And she had some pretty like good constructive criticism, but it was uncomfortable because I was like, ooh, yeah, that's kind of stings. That's not good to hear from a coaching point of view. But we started having a year in review meeting. And then obviously Eva was having parent meetings, but then also we would have smaller, like 15-minute meetings with everybody, just like, how's school? Like, what are your goals? Have they changed? Like, I think that's something that a lot of people screw up in gymnastics, is like the misalignment of goals. When like your parent thinks you want something, the gymnast changes their goals. The coach only has one focus on a competitive team at a high level. And everybody not being on the same page of the same goal, if it's changed, causes so much friction between a lot of people. And instead of just being like, hey, is this still what you want? Do you still not want this? And for some people, like, yep, I'm still good. Like, still want to go to college and compete. Some people like, you know what? I just, Jackie's a perfect example. Jackie's like, I have these other school projects I want to do, and I really love, this and that. And you're like, okay, cool. That's totally fine. We're just going to manage your expectations, because I'm not going to make you do something that you don't want to do yourself. Let's just make sure your parents are on board. So like, I think that's a very important thing for people to take away. Heather, what do you think?
Okay, so I guess my experience is a little similar to Taylor's, but I kind of went from growing up in an atmosphere where I wasn't really allowed to talk about how I was feeling, injuries that I was going through. If I was having a bad day, you kind of just had to suck it up, go to the bathroom, cry it out by yourself, and then just like put on a happy face and act like everything's fine, until I switched gyms and I met you guys. Like it was a lot easier because it was just open communication. I could kind of tell you guys when I was like having an off day, or if something was hurting me, and I didn't have to worry about you guys like forcing me to like continue like through the pain, just push through it. And also like, I obviously know myself and my body better than you guys do. And like, it was nice that I could be like, you know what, instead of doing this assignment, can I do this instead? Because I think it'll be more beneficial for me, and I'll have a more productive practice versus like what you initially wanted me to do. So I think just communication with like the gymnast and the coach, and having that trust with each other, is just like what makes it all so much better, and allows for a positive experience in the gym, and allows you to kind of get more skills, because you're also being like backed up on like what you want to do and just supported. It's just a nice support system, I guess I could say. Yeah, that was my experience then.
Yeah. And that was something that Eva taught me too, is like how it becomes more of like a shared kind of partnership towards a common goal. Whereas like, I think in some places it's like the coach says and all the gymnasts do. And then we had the problem of like I said, like it was like a zoo, right? Like people were like just doing whatever they wanted. They wouldn't follow the assignment. So like by having a shared partnership of like, okay, this is the structured goal of the practice of the event of whatever we have to do. If this is too hard or too easy, like let's talk with each other, let's figure it out. So you're kind of, most of the time, you're all doing kind of what the goal and the plan is. But every once in a while, like you said, like someone's going to have like an injury, they can't do it. Somebody's going to have like a tough day where they can't get through those numbers, or something's going to go wrong. And I think when people are able to have that communication and they're able to have that trust and still figure out a way to move forward with the plan, that's always the best. But I think as a coach, it took us finding other creative ways to make sure the practice could still go forward, not just like, oh, you're hurt, go in the corner and do your PT, or like, oh, get out of my face. Like, I can't believe you don't want to do this. Like, you have a mental block, like just go over there and like figure it out. Like, I think unfortunately past versions of me, and also a lot of places still like don't know what to do with kids that have like an ankle issue, or kids that have a mental block, or kids that like can't quite get this series because they can't go backwards because of a back problem. So like coaches have to invest in other experts like mental health, nutritionists, strength coaches, whoever, to learn what to do with kids during practice that are maybe not like having the best of days. And that's very, very important from my point of view, about because you want to keep those kids involved in the group. Can you imagine if we'd send you guys to the corner, be like, go do your PT, come back when you're done? Like, no, there's always a way to kind of like figure it out, you know? So that's my random thought. But Eva, what do you think?
I think that it's fun to hear all these perspectives from you guys. You know, we're hoping that this was the impact it would have, and that the open communication would be something that you guys could carry outside of the gym. And so it's I don't know, it feels good to hear you guys say these things about how, you know, it worked, because we were a little bit nervous about taking on a new philosophy and trying something new. And, you know, every time you take a risk like that, you're not really sure if it's going to pay off. And you just hope it doesn't hurt anybody or cause any damage. And, but I think in the end, like, you just can't go wrong with open communication, as long as it's done respectfully and with good intention. And so I'm glad to hear that it worked for you guys in the end. It definitely worked for us, because we felt like we could be on the same page and know what you guys wanted and help you achieve your goals. So that, I think, just overall, it's a win-win in that way, because it's super satisfying as a coach to be able to help your gymnasts achieve their goals, and it makes you feel empowered as a coach, makes you feel like, maybe we can do this again for the next group. And it's part of what keeps us coming back to the gym. Just like how it keeps gymnasts coming back every time you get a new skill or achieve something. So a lot of hard work, but these are those moments where it feels like it was worth it. And so thank you. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, I think this is a perfect way to wrap things up. And I think we're going to go I want to go like round table now, because I think the best way to wrap this up is now looking back at the 8 years that we've spent together from the first start of 2000, or 8 years that I've been with everybody. And just looking back of like what we've been through, like the arc of kind of the long journey is like, now we're all removed from our situation. Obviously the three of you are graduated, you moved on, like some of you are still coaching, but like looking back on your career now and seeing the change, like what is the advice that you have to a lot of people out there in the gymnastics world? Because like I said, the people listening to this, a lot of gymnasts, a lot of coaches, a lot of medical providers, a lot of people very high up in organizations that are like changing things after the Olympics, particularly, are trying to look for like, what are the big take home messages to try to change their culture to make it more of a positive environment. And I'll go first to let you guys maybe think on that. But for me, I think the biggest kind of like aha moment was me realizing like I have to think about the next steps beyond when this decision that I'm making, like what does it affect? Like what's the change it's going to, or what's the impact in 2 minutes, in 2 weeks, in 2 months, in 2 years, in 20 years for me and the athletes that I work with. Right. And like this right now is a perfect example for me, because it's very heartwarming for me to have you three on a podcast. Like there's other people who unfortunately I don't think we did the best job with, and they probably wouldn't have this great experience. Right. But there's like you guys being here and like seeing like Kayla going to PT school and Hannah doing so well coaching, and Heather, like who was going to quit and then went to college and competed and then is now back at our gym. Like that is the ultimate reward for me. But I only got to that place as a coach when I thought about like, okay, what is it going to be when I see Taylor in 20 years? Like, what is she going to think of me and our decisions and what we did, when I said, no, keep training on your hip and keep going forward, or, somebody had a problem with a fear and I was like, just keep pushing through it. I think about like what will happen in those two-step intervals if I'm making one decision or the other. So that's always for me is like thinking about like our priority filter we talk about, which is like health, build good humans, build good gymnasts. And I always make decisions in that lens now because, down the road, being able to see somebody be happy and have a great experience and enjoy, the gym and stuff like that is, I think that's the ultimate reward. So if you have kids that are not coming back to the gym or are very bitter about their experiences or, are bitter about a certain coach, like you need to really sit down and have some hard conversations with yourself first about if you're part of the problem. And then if not, what can you do constructively to be like, all right, let's lay it on the table and like get to the root of this because it's not going anywhere in particular. So those are my thoughts. But Taylor, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I guess going back to what Eva was saying about change starting at the top, like you guys just emitted this certain energy and the certain openness and all of that was like reflected in us all. So just us like learning to be like open and communicate well and like knowing our why and like all these great qualities that we could bring through life. Like you guys really showed us. So thank you.
Tears. Anna, what do you think?
I think, well, as a gymnast, like if I think back to when I was a gymnast and I realized I probably wasn't making the best choices at practice, thinking like, oh, if I was younger again, like what would I want to see? And I guess then if you are a coach thinking, oh, if I was doing gymnastics again, like who would I want to coach me? And then think about what they would do or what they would say and try to build off of that. I also think that we're so eager when we're younger and we're so excited about gymnastics, but like if something's hurting you or if something's bothering you just in general, it's nice to like have the opportunity to say something. And I definitely feel like it's trickled down in our gym. Like girls that I coach that are on like the younger levels will tell me like, so-and-so, this happened today at school and I'm feeling this way. And I'm like, all right, like we'll work with that. Like, let me know what you need. So I think having the communication for when I was a gymnast, it allows me to like see that it's like going through, that it's more of our culture now, not just like this one group that had good coaches. And now that you both aren't that involved in coaching anymore, like it's still going, I guess.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And it's weird serendipity how it works out. Is I just had a long conversation with someone today who said like the gym owner is 71 and he's still doing what he kind of did when he was like growing up as a gymnast. And so like the staff that got trained under him have a very particular way about flexibility and strength and numbers. And then now the kids that are just graduating and joining the junior mentorship in their gym are doing exactly the same thing that generation did. So the new generation of coaches in 2021 is doing what the 71-year-old coach did in the 50s, for his approach. And it's like, for me, it's like, man, that's terrifying, right? Like if you're just doing what your gym has done before, and it's only you're living in your four walls of who you're getting trained from and coached from, that's a recipe for disaster, because all of these things change like weekly, like new techniques, new ideas, new research, all that kind of stuff. So you owe it to yourself and you owe it to the gymnast to constantly be reading and trying to have these conversations. And I think something we didn't talk about in the podcast that's important is like, when we started saying like, I don't know, I'm going to find someone to help me out with that. Like, oh, I screwed up, I'm sorry. Like, I don't think I'm sorry came out of my mouth the first 2 years that I was coaching at the gym. And then after that, I'm just like, you know what? Yeah, no, I definitely screwed that up. Like, that's way too hard. Like, we can't do that. Or like, I don't know. Let me take a video and ask Nick. Or like, I don't know. Let's let Eva watch. Like, maybe she has a better eye for these series than I do. Like, and I think that spreads throughout the entire gym of people being willing to ask for help and say, I don't know, when other people are doing that as well. So that would be another kind of back to role modeling, like you said, Taylor. So that's my 2 cents. But Heather, what do you think?
Okay, so personally, I just can't emphasize like communication enough, especially being like a coach now. I don't think I would have like the coaching style that I currently have now if I didn't switch gyms and I wasn't in the culture and atmosphere that you guys like provided us with. So honestly, just making sure that you're communicating with your gymnast and you're just like allowing them to like open up to you if they feel comfortable enough, and like letting you know if they're having a rough day, so you can kind of like help them navigate through the practice while making sure like they're going to be all right and they're not going to push themselves past a certain limit where they're like going to break down or just like not feel okay inside or mentally or physically. And also, I think like another great thing that you guys also helped us with is just like kind of like goal settings, like for each event, and just like making sure that it's feasible and keeping the gymnasts on track so they can actually get to where they want to be versus just kind of like free for alling it. But I would say those are like 2 big things that you guys have introduced to me and that now I can like take as a coach and help the gymnasts that I work with now.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is another thing that I think I just want to quickly mention is like move ups and who's competing what skills at what events and stuff like that. It was from this group where it was like the Wild West, where people were just chucking skills. Like, God, I love her to death, but like a couple people, I'm not going to say her name, but she was just like, oh, I'll just do a Souk. And if I under rotate it and like I hurt my ankle, I was like, I'm willing to take that risk. And we are like, no, that's not how this works. But we developed out of like these hard conversations where everyone was just kind of flying by the seat of their pants. Was like, you have to show 7 of the skills you're going to compete in a meet setting every week before the competition, before you're allowed to even entertain the conversation of doing a new skill. And like, here are the requirements for each level. And here's what you have to get for attendance. And here's what we want to see for scores. Here's what we want to see for mental skills and stuff when you can move up. And like, I think when Eva was more clear with the parents about like, well, this is what the requirement is to move up, and this is what we have to see every meet, it started to not become a question between like, well, why did she move up and why didn't she move up? Like, here's a red, yellow, and a green light stop system now that we use that was forged out of this area because we wanted more clear lines in the sand. So I highly recommend that people listening to this, if you're having some trouble with move ups or who's competing or are we competing this skill, like objectify who moves up with what and who's competing what based on like, show us 7 of these safely before you compete in a meet. And I think that took away a lot of headaches and worries for us about like, why is this person flipping a Souk and why is this person doing a new bar release when I'm not doing mine? And so that was very good for us to establish. But Eva, last parting thoughts before we wrap it up.
I think from the gym leader, owner, manager standpoint, I would just encourage everyone to pause, identify your priorities, stick to them in the good times, stick to them in the tough times, communicate them over and over and over again. Don't assume people just know. Come back to them all the time. And always consider intent versus impact. A lot of times our intent when we act or when we speak is one thing, but the impact it truly has is something completely different. And I think it can be short-term impact. It can be long-term impact. So before we speak or before we act, come back to the priorities, come back to the core values and say, okay, is the impact going to be in line with our priority filter? And if it is, then go for it. If not, maybe think of a different way to say it, or maybe think of a different action to take. I think that is kind of just all encompassing. Like if you just start there, then you're in good shape to build from that.
I think that is the best thing to end the podcast on. That was wonderful. Very well said. Well, friends, I could literally talk to you for 4 more hours. This is wonderful. And so thank you guys for being a part of the podcast. Everybody crushed it. Nobody had any, slip ups. It was great. No need to worry. It's fine. But yeah, I think this will be very, very helpful for a lot of people. And I can't wait to see the emails and the text message conversations that come after it. So thanks, everybody.